Good morning and welcome to this podcast with Metering and Smart Energy International. I'm Claire Falkvane. I'm the editor of the magazine, and with me today, we're very lucky to be welcoming Sharon Allan. Now, Sharon, as you may know, is the CEO and president of the Smart Grid Interoperability Panel. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us. It's really good to have an opportunity to speak to you again.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Claire. And it's so wonderful to know that we're sitting miles apart, and yet it's as if we're right together. So technology is a wonderful thing. So I appreciate the time that you're taking this morning.
Sharon, when we last spoke, one of the things that you were quite passionate about was the need for the priorities and for those to really be the focus for the year. And I was wondering if you could possibly give us an update on what your priorities are with SGIP going forward.
So, the priorities that we've had for when I started earlier this year and had announced out into the community that we were going to be focused on really three areas. Those three areas have remained our focus for 2015, and the three areas are, if you don't recall, were our work around how do we help drive forward interoperability of devices to help with distributed resources, including microgrids and storage that are distribution connected, and in documenting and looking at what test beds exist in North America that can be leveraged, and last but not least, continuing along best practices in terms of cybersecurity that utilities can employ to help them along this journey as more and more things become connected. So we've continued with those focus. What we've been doing is in terms of looking at how distributed resources affects us, we kicked off a project early in the year called Open FMB, which a lot of the initial groundwork had been done by Duke Energy. And we, partnered with Duke, so to speak. And since that time, we've brought many other people into that collaborative effort. So we've got several of our investor-owned utilities. We've got public power cooperatives and several vendors. And we've been working with both Duke, CPS Energy, and one of the national labs, NREL, out in Golden, Colorado. And we've progressed this year in terms of defining some use cases around microgrid. Work has proceeded to the point where there's various vendors who are working on getting their grid devices to communicate and interoperate with each other. And we hope to bring that and show that at our annual conference, which is held November 3rd through 5th. In New Orleans this year. So there's been a lot of hard work that's happened in a very short period of time. We're working with the Standards Development Organization, NASB, and that process is already kicked off to take the work that we're doing and embody it into a standard. So that process is now likely that we'll start to see things coming out of that first quarter of next year. But we're going to see some of the initial interoperability of these devices from this work at November of this year at our conference. The testbed effort has been progressing. The data collection is still going on. It's been, as you can imagine, hunting down, trying to get responsiveness from people, is a bit of a time consuming. So we're still in the data gathering mode. We haven't gotten to the point where we're crunching it, but we're looking to be able to take that and then produce a report that we will publish by year end. And on the cybersecurity, we've got some utilities where we're doing a use case on what they've had best practices, leveraging DOE's C2M2 and their cyber risk frameworks, and we are conducting the interviews now, and we'll publish a case study report in the fall of this year. With the work effort that we have done, we've also looked at kind of a broader picture. So if you look at what we're doing with Open FMB, larger context that as we have devices more interconnected into what some people would call energy IoT, energy Internet of Things, we believe that lines up very well with actions and activities that we as an organization can take to help promote that energy IoT agenda and help interoperability to be a common foundational piece that helps drive that pervasive connectivity of devices along the grid, even to the point of touching the consumer.
Now, do you think that having three priorities to focus on has helped really drive the success? I mean, it seems to me that you have really managed to accomplish an enormous amount in a very short space of time.
I think the focus is helped because coming into the organization, some of the comments that I received from utilities and large vendors is they were a bit unclear and confused as to what SGIP was doing and was about. And I think bringing the focus has really helped on the clarity front. And it's also easier to articulate to gain the common interest of those where that agenda resonates and is important to them. Since we've gotten that under our belt, we're now looking to how do we continue on that thread and expand. So one of our newer projects that we had kicked off probably the end of last year, but it's starting to get some legs now, and that's in terms of looking at when we along our thread of distributed renewable generation and storage, we had a priority action plan called PAP 25, which was really focused around solar bankability and how do we help to reduce cost by removing barriers for penetration of residential solar. Our U.S. Department of Energy has a report that shows that 54% of residential solar costs, the projects, is really due to the fragmentation of data and the lack of standards around data exchange. So we now have a priority action plan that we're looking at what are some of those soft costs and how do we help to reduce that by having some standard data in terms of financial data so that some of the banking organizations have better transparency, which would then translate to lower risk, which translates to better rates on some of these project costs. So that's a good, positive, new activity that is, as I said, getting legs under itself that has also picked up some momentum this year within the organization.
Well, it really sounds like you're forging forward at great speed and with a really big amount of success. Now, you mentioned earlier on about the conference that you're hosting, and that's in New Orleans from November the 3rd to the 5th. And I was wondering, could you talk a little bit about the event and what the objectives are that you're wanting to achieve?
Yeah, sure. So it is the SGIP annual conference, and it is at the Intercontinental in New Orleans. And there are really three key objectives that I would say exist for the conference. One is in terms of having those conversations and collaboration among diverse stakeholders. So having a face-to-face where we're bringing together regulators, senior utility executives, vendors, consultants to have conversations around microgrids, storage, renewables, new entrants in terms of EVs and data analytics, and what are the things we need to do. So, getting people in a room to have those open dialogues, that's, first and foremost. Another very important element is I mentioned this year we are actually going to have an area where we have an exhibitor where we will show interoperability. So this is not exhibitors in terms of vendors being there just to have booths to sell their wares. This is an exhibit that is going to be showing and demonstrating interoperability of various vendors working together to have their various pieces within the ecosystem work and interoperate with each other. So we're really excited about that. This is the first year we've done that, and we look to build upon it because driving interoperability has been one of the foundational premises of this organization. And then the third thing is, because we're going to have this collection of people there, we're utilizing it to have working group meetings where we have these monthly calls where we are moving forward our agenda on cybersecurity and with our Open F&B project. And I told you about the solar bankability project that we have.
Yeah.
We're actually at the end of the conference, we will have a day where people can stay, and we'll have various committee meetings where we will be working through, some of the hands-on detail on work products that are coming out of these various committees. Really excited, a lot of work to get there, but it's coming together, and absolutely couldn't have done it without not only the staff, but the utilities and vendors who are really coming together to help make this a reality. When I came in, I said, hey, it's very important to us as an organization that we have utilities and independent power producers working with us, because ultimately they're the ones who are trying to deliver secure, reliable power for the end customer. And so we have really focused on making sure we hear their voice, we know what's important to them, what are their pain points, and working on these projects that benefit consumers in the community at large, but help them to achieve, delivering on the promise of clean, safe, reliable electricity to customers.
I remember that was one of the things that you said when we spoke last year, was about the fact that at the end of the day, that was the biggest priority, was making sure that you were delivering the kind of power to the people that they needed in order for them to prosper economically and within their family environments. And that was the most important driver for what you saw SGIP doing.
Yeah, it is. And, November's going to be very exciting in that we're actually going to be able to see, physically witness some of this hard work that has gone on, which will, up until that point have been kind of 11 months of work that we'll actually then get to see working. In the first phase, obviously not everything is going to be developed and done all at once, but we'll at least see progress of the work that has taken place.
Well, I'm particularly excited about the opportunity to see all of that technology working together in that way. I mean, that really is the best testament to what SGIP is about, is to actually physically see the equipment working and interoperating, in that kind of utility environment. The other question I had for you was, you've been in your position at SGIP now for 10, 11 months. What do you think the greatest organizational success has been thus far?
I think the greatest organizational success has been declaring that we are going to focus and we're not going to try and be the end-all be-all to everyone. We're going to pick what some of the key pain points within the industry and bring our utility clients back to the table who had started to leave the organization in 2014 and have come back. So I think that's been one of our greatest accomplishments is really doing that. Also pivoting our strategy a bit to be more project focused on looking at an industry issue and defining it as a project as in terms of what we could accomplish and driving that through. But not least is we made changes internally within our internal structure in terms of the board, in terms of the staff. Pretty much the staff's all new, and that has really helped to have a unified approach to where we're going as an organization, because any organization that wants to accomplish something, you have to have the board, the members, and the staff moving in harmony along the same path. And all that has come together beautifully this year. So,
before we end off, I just wanted to ask, is there anything else that you would like to raise, anything that you feel is really important from the SGIP perspective that you would like our listeners to know about?
I think our commitment that we are a neutral organization that is not advocating one position or one agenda, and that neutrality is what gives us the strength as an organization, because we're aiming to make sure that we run a consensus process that takes into account all viewpoints as we look to drive something that removes a barrier to help accelerate grid modernization. So maintaining our neutrality is very important to us and key, and I think ultimately that's what gives us the strength as an organization.
Okay, so Sharon, thank you. I know that you have a million things that you need to do today, but I just wanted to remind those people listening today that the SGIP annual conference is taking place in New Orleans from the 3rd to the 5th of November at the Intercontinental, and you can find more information about that on the SGIP website and, of course, on the Metering International events section as well. So please be sure to have a look at the information. If you are interested in attending, please make sure that you register. I imagine that registrations are going to be filling up pretty quickly. And Sharon, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. From Metering International, I'm Claire Falkvane. Thank you for joining us.